All right, I'd like to do a quick review of this book by Neil Peart, Far and Wide. I think this is the last thing he ever wrote. I think. Definitely during their final tour, 2015. And it's a lot about being on the road too, because he really liked to travel from venue to venue. I believe it was 17,000 miles he rode that BMW for that 35 tour, that last tour that was 35 dates. That's a lot, 17,000 miles. And if you look at some of the conditions in the pictures, I mean, he rode in the rain and the cold. It's more than I would want to do. Especially when you figure he wasn't, 35 years old. And a lot of the book he talks about his daughter Olivia, and there's like little cartoons. They would draw cartoons together. The one thing you really get out of this book is how much he loved that little girl and wanted to spend time with her. And you think about his career, how long it was with Rush, and I think it was a year after that last concert that he got the brain cancer. It was a year from the year after that, approximately. You work so hard your whole life, and then your retirement is like gone. He he talks about things like obviously he didn't like any sort of organized religion, so that if that could offend you, just look at that picture. That is a heck of a road there. And of course, everyone knows that he did not want to talk to fans. And the thing that I have a hard time with is, why didn't he just do it a little bit at a concert? I mean, I can see, when you're buying groceries, somebody coming up to you screaming, "Oh, Neil Peart, I love you," blah, blah, blah. I can see that, but once in a while at the meet and greets, I don't understand why he couldn't just spend 5 minutes with some little kid or something. I don't know. But I mean, he pretty much laid that aspect of being a celebrity down a long time ago. Can't pretend a stranger is a long awaited friend. And I get that. And, this, there's, I don't know. I just think a little bit of it at the concert venue afterwards, a meet and greet would have been cool, because I kind of understand where he's coming from, but it makes him look arrogant. It kind of, when somebody's like that, it kind of makes it look arrogant. I think he just felt really uncomfortable with that. He said it just made him feel uncomfortable dealing with fans like that. And getting back to the whole fan thing, he talks about in 1974, they played at a gig, and Don in concert, or Don Kirshner's rock concert, one of those, and he ran into George Harrison, and I think, were they walking downstairs or something, and George was walked up a spiral staircase, and he was behind him, and George turned around and looked at him, and he had this fearful look in his eye, kind of like, oh no, is this guy gonna like be like this crazy fan? And he talks a little bit about that. And one thing, although he didn't like interacting with, fans, he put out some cool videos and books. So that was his way of interacting, because like reading this book, it's like he's talking to you. It's not, it's so even though he didn't, want to talk to people, he gave them a conversation in a different kind of aspect. And I think that's something you don't want to forget about that. And another thing too, he really wanted to pound the crap out of those drums. And like, I'm 62. When I was younger, I loved pounding the crap out of the drums too. But that's going to take a toll when you're in your 60s. That's going to take a toll on your body too. You don't, recording, you always want to hit your drums really hard, like consistently hard. But his thing was, he wanted to play really well and pound the crap out of the drums. And that probably was part of his issue with, what did he have? Tinnitus, or he had some, bad issues. And during this trip, his one foot got really wet, and he got like his foot got like infected, and his foot was killing him during that last tour, during part of that last tour. And he talks about that in here. Near the beginning of the book, he does talk about being a kid and getting his first drum set, and he talks about stuff like that in his early career and that. But it's a lot of this book. It's not just him talking about Rush and playing drums. A lot of it is talking about where he's traveling. He wants to go on roads that he's never been on before, because he's been riding around between concert venues for years. This guy obviously knew America, but he was always trying to find a road, sneak by a fence and go up a stone road or whatever. That's probably why he chose that BMW motorcycle, because you could take it off road. Although it's kind of a giant, heavy dirt bike, but he really liked the traveling part of it. He really liked, like me. I can't imagine riding in the rain for hours or in the cold. I gave up motorcycles like over 20 years ago. When I was a kid, yeah, when I was younger, but I don't know how he did it at his age. Obviously he probably kept in pretty good shape. I get the impression that he didn't even want to do this last tour. I kind of get that impression, because I think they wanted to do a lot longer tour than 35 dates. And he was like, no, I think that he's the reason why it wasn't longer. Because really, when you see interviews with Alex and Geddy, you could tell they would tour as long as they were physically able. I think his thing was he didn't want to do it if he couldn't play at his peak. So he picked the right time to say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. Kind of like that one song with the violin. Talks about Hemingway and a dancer. I can't think of the name of the song, although I'm trying. I can't think of the name of it. Losing It, that's what it is. I think that was on his mind a lot. So they did play Losing It, on some of these dates. It shows them playing it. And then there was that big rig of his, the RV with the trailer. The trailer could hold the bikes in the back, because he used to ride with this guy. And sometimes he would meet other friends of his, and they would ride certain places with him and that. Sometimes it would be like 3 of them. So they would always park at the Chateau de Walmarts, Could you imagine being at Walmart, being like a Rush fan and seeing Neil Peart? Yeah, the best thing to do. I always wondered if I ever ran into Neil Peart, I just wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't say hi. I wouldn't wave. I'm not the kind of person who wants to go up and, hey, will you let me take a selfie? Oh yeah, he talks about that. People wanting to take selfies with you after they've met you for a whole 10 seconds. Hey, look at this picture. I was with so-and-so. That is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. So I'm the kind of guy, I don't want to barrage people, especially famous people, because a lot of times famous people, you think of them as being a certain way, and they're not that way at all. And really, I got into Rush in 75, shortly after 2112 came out. And I always thought Neil Peart was this really cool guy. But really, he was kind of a nerd, really. He was real quiet, kind of more of a, I don't want to say insecure, but he was a little bit nerdy. And I've heard him say that about himself. Even Alex Lifeson, when they were auditioning, he's like, I didn't know if he's cool enough to be in our band. Because he was kind of a different guy. He was a bookworm. Everybody's different. But once I learned more about who this guy was, I learned he wasn't the real, the guy that I thought he was. A lot more cerebral, a lot more, I'm a thinker, not like some guy who wants to go out and party all the time. And the one thing about Neil Peart was. Which I don't think it's in this book, but something that I do obviously know about him, he sure would practice a lot. Before they would do a tour, they would practice the sets for a couple of weeks before they hit the road, and he would practice alone for 2 weeks. He was very studious at making sure his chops were good, which every drummer should do that. That's one thing you can say about Neil Peart. And just a side note, in the 80s, I was always trying to play Rush stuff. And I remember never once did I ever try to play Tom Sawyer because I didn't like Tom Sawyer. To me, it just seemed like this radio sellout tune, and so I never tried it. I never tried playing it. And then years later, probably like 15, 17 years ago, I mean, it's 2021 now, so probably like 2004 or 5, I tried to play it and I was like, what the heck? That song, like he says, it's super hard to play. If somebody can play that song correctly, you got a pretty good right arm, That's a tough song to play. And it's funny how all these years, some like 25 years, I never had a clue how hard that song was. So if you're a Rush fan and you like Neil Peart, you'll probably enjoy this book. I enjoyed it. You get to understand this guy, really private kind of guy. Really sad how, after he retires, a year after he retires, gets this brain tumor, brain cancer. That is really crappy. But I think you enjoy this book. I don't know if I'm going to buy any other books. I think for me, this is enough. But if you're like a super Rush Neil Peart fan, you might want to get some other ones. But this one was enjoyable. It's mostly about him traveling. I mean, there's stuff about Rush, obviously, and about, drums and about him growing up. But I would say the book is about 60% of going from venue to venue. He liked to stay in cheap places. He would never stay in 5-star hotels, So anyway, that's my review. I enjoyed it. If you're a fan, you probably will enjoy it too. So anyway, have a great day. If you like this video, please subscribe. That would help me. Hit the like button. I appreciate all that stuff. Have a great day.